All right, welcome everybody. So we're going to work on making this Invision prototype from an existing design. So just taking a look at it here, right? Not very complicated. There's a feed page, it scrolls. You see there's a fixed menu at the top and the bottom. Click on the image, it does a slide. We click on this play button here. It opens up the audio player. We can close the audio player. We can go back to the home page. That's about it, right? Just a simple prototype working from the original designs. Okay, so let's go back and take a look at our Illustrator file. And I've done this in two versions. I've done a Photoshop version and an Illustrator version. So if we take a look at the Photoshop version, let's just start there and move this up in and scale down so that we're all together here. Okay. All right. So just the basic stuff, right? I've got everything broken up into various layer sets. Okay. And let's do, right? So we've got, there's a footer, you can see story 1, story 2, story 3. All right. Nothing fancy. Within each of the layer sets, you've got multiple layers. Oh, it looks like don't quite have all my fonts loaded, but we're not gonna, won't be a big problem. So when you're doing your designs, working in Photoshop is fine, working in Illustrator is fine, working in Figma, fine. Basically, you just need to get your screens to look like whatever it is you want them to look like. Whatever techniques you use, everything is on the table. Once you've done that, now we need to figure out how to export assets to create our prototype, right? So if we toggle back to prototype and just take a quick look. All right, so clearly we have a whole screen, right? And we've got this sort of solid header area, and then we've got this transparent footer. The transparent footer is a little bit of a trick, but I'll show you how we do that. And then on the second screen, right, we have one screen, has all the information, right, has its footer icons, its messaging panel, a couple of comments, and then on the play button, it's the same exact screen, but with the addition of the player overlay, which we can turn on and off, right? So it doesn't jump around. Turn it on, fades on, turn it off. Okay, so we're going to need at least 3 states of this app, right? We need this feed page, we need this detail page, and we need the detail page in 2 versions, one without the player and one with the player, okay? And if we take a look at the Invision dashboard, you'll see that that's what I have, right? So I've got a no player, names are a little mashuganated, so we should probably clean those up. But the home feed, okay, all right, so back to our Photoshop file. So there's another Photoshop file. I'm not gonna go through all the Photoshop, but once you've got it designed, right, we can do an export, you can save for web, and here it is, right? And let's drag this up, okay? And I'm just gonna do a ping 8-bit, which is just a little bit smaller. You'll see that it gets a little more pixelated down here, but the file size down here on the right is 444K, so small. If I change it to ping 24, right now it's almost 2 megs. So, and the quality is not so much better, right, that we're really getting anything. Oh, but you know what? I do remember, I think we're gonna go 24. Yes, okay. So you see down here on the footer, in my Photoshop file, let's just cancel this. Zoom in so we can see. You see that the footer is transparent. All right, and if you remember back to the prototype, the transparency, we're able to scroll underneath and have this background be slightly see-through. So we need to set that up in our original file. because we'll need it handled a specific way when we get into the into Invision. So we'll set just this panel, right? The rest of it is all solid. Okay, so and because of that, we're going to need the 24-bit version of the ping, even though the file's on the big, because that will be the only way that we'll actually get the transparency that we want. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and save that, and I'm just going to make a new folder here on the desktop. And create that, and I'm going to call this home feed and just give it a number 1. It's a ping file, and there we go. Okay. All right. So there we go. Just make that a little smaller so we can see it more. All right. So there it is. Okay. Now, Photoshop is not the only app you can work in. You can do these in other design applications. And it's awful big. Let's go. Okay. So here's the same design in Illustrator, right? I've got 2 artboards for this version. Rather than 2 separate files, they're both in a single file with the artboards. One is the feed right here on the left, and on the right is the detail. And you'll also notice about the audio player. And the audio player for here, I have on a separate layer so I can turn it on and off so that I can export the artboards without it and with it, right? Because those are the 3 screens that I'm going to need. So I'm going to export just a single one of the feed and then 2 different versions of the detail post with and without the player, and we'll use that, okay? When I was creating these in Illustrator, I just used the export of the Photoshop file, and then just built my Illustrator version side by side, right, to match it. So whatever tool you're comfortable with, you should work with. As long as you build neatly, it doesn't really matter. What is very important when you're doing these prototypes is that your elements from artboard to artboard need to match exactly, right? So whatever the group for settings here, right, where these elements are placed, you should always make sure that you place it to the X and the Y of the top left corner. So if this is set to 0, 0, this whole message should be to 0, 0, right? If it's minus 0.5, or then when you go from screen to screen, your graphics will jump a little bit. They'll wiggle, and they'll just not, it just won't give that simulation of looking smooth, right? You can see that I didn't bother updating some of my profile pictures here, and I may go back to that, we'll see. But other than that, everything is using the right typefaces, the right icons, recreating, and there's a little bit of visual difference between the 2, but not enough to really matter. Because we're trying to get these things to be as close to the screen grabs that you're working from as possible. So, okay. All right. So I'm just going to turn off the background just so it's not in our way. And I do have, right, that same challenge to simulate that I want these footers to be transparent so that the whole screen can scroll underneath them and we get that sort of transparency effect. And I do that by setting the footer icons, right? So these icons, so that they have a transparent background, but then underneath I have a white panel, and let's just drag this up above, right? So there's the panel, and that panel stops at the top of the footer. Okay, so we've got, right, so you can see that's where it stops. So it's going to be a background for all the rest of the file, except for this footer, right, which this element, the opacity is here at 75, okay, for that background panel. So there is a panel behind it. Okay, back to that. All right, let's just put this back where it belongs. Okay, I'll mark all this stuff down. Okay. So in prepping the file, all right, we have to plan for that footer transparency. Okay. So under File and Illustrator, we are going to go Export for Screens. And then the Export for Screens panel will give us the option to export either of the artboards or both of them. Some settings, right, it's going to do 1 to 2. We do not want to include the bleed, so if your design bleeds out beyond the edge of the artboard, don't include it. This is just point where we're going to export this stuff to, so. All right, so I put them also in the Invision demo. You'll see that. All right, we're going to leave this 1 scale, -8, ping format, all fine, okay? And these are both checked here and here, and here we go. Boom. Okay. And, all right, those are our 2 inside our Invis demo. So there's artboard 1 and artboard 2, okay? All right, so we're going to close that for a second. Let's go back to Illustrator. And as I mentioned, we need 3 screens. So we're going to turn off the audio player, and then we're going to do File, Export for Screens again. And I don't need 1, I just need 2. And I'm going to need 2. This one here, right? I'm going to move these out of 1x, and I'm going to move that to trash. Because it's going to make another 1x folder and want to overwrite, and I don't want that quite to happen yet. So I'm going to call this home feed, right? Just so we know where it came from. And then this one, detail post. Okay, and this, we call this detail post player. Illustrator. Okay. All right, then I'm going to export the artboard. There it is. We use this name. Well, now it's going to be no player. Okay, all right, so there it is, no player. There's a version with the player. Home feed out of Photoshop. Home feed out of Illustrator. Okay, that's that. Okay, we can close that for now. All right, and now we're all set. Working here in Illustrator, we're just going to leave this. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and make a new prototype right from scratch, right? So if we start back on, go to all my projects. Okay, so when you first log in, right, you'll be, got it, what is this stuff, go away. All right, and so again, these are all the projects I've been making lately. Okay, you can see doing the demo, and I'm just gonna delete this one. Yes, delete the prototype. Yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. All right, so we're gonna make a new one. Okay, click the big pink button, and then you're gonna choose to create a prototype. I'm gonna make mine for the iPhone, and I'm gonna call this FA 2020 Invis Demo. Okay. All right, create it. Great. There it is. Okay. If you're working with Sketch or Photoshop, you can use a plugin called Craft. Can't see it on my window, but and it will sync all of your artboards together. It works pretty great if you have a big project. For small projects, you can use it or not use it. It's not crucial. Okay. So I'm going to open up my Invision demo here, and I'm going to bring up. I'm just going to work with the Illustrator versions. I'm not going to work with the Photoshop version for the demo. So and I drag them up, and there we go. Up here in the top, you'll see this little blue circle thing spinning. That means the files are being uploaded. I have a slow connection, so it might take a long time to upload. Hopefully yours will go very quickly. Okay, that's all set, thank goodness. All right, I'm just going to drag this one. So the files will display your prototype from left to right, so this being the first one and working its way through. This loading screen, like if you have some kind of special graphic for your studio that you want people to see while the prototype is loading, you can set that up. If you don't do anything with it, you'll just get the default Invision one, and it's fine, so you don't have to worry about that thing. All right, so here are our 3 screens. So let's go ahead and view our first one. Okay. And under configuration, right, you can see that the default here is the iPhone X. I didn't really design this project for iPhone X, so it looks a little weird down here in the footer, right, with the rounded corners. But these are, and again, the video, right, the screen extends up above, right, and again, my design doesn't really handle this form exactly right. So when you're working, you need to decide what frame you really want to work with. This is an old design, so it was originally created for the 6. So I'm just going to switch the skin to the 6, right? Now it fits a little bit better, right? And mine keeps having this busted graphic line. I cannot figure out where this is coming from. I've tried replacing it a bunch of times. It's still stuck in there. Something's happening with that file, but I just haven't figured it out yet. So, okay, status bar is going to be transparent. Okay, that's fine. Right, you can change it to different colors if you want. All right, and I'm just going to go ahead and save that. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is switch here to build mode, these icons along the bottom. And once you're in build mode, now you'll have access to the Invision creation tools. First thing we're going to do is set a fixed header. And you can see how it zooms in, and with the blue line, you can set it exactly where you want, right? And we'll preview, and now when you scroll, the header from your app stays in place, right? Just helps give it a little bit more sense of reality. And surprise, surprise, we're going to do the same thing at the footer. So you scroll down, and the same thing. Now, if you remember that transparent background, you can start to imagine why we needed that to be transparent, okay? And what you get, right, you'll see the effect right here. Yeah, so we could tighten that up, get rid of that white line. Let's go ahead and do that. It's a little hard to see. Yeah. That's pretty good. Yeah, that looks okay. All right. So now when we scroll, right, the footer stays in place and it looks like an overlay because it's transparent, right, and then the software gives us the slide. And the other one being solid, right, so it all sets. Okay, great. Well, it looks pretty good, right? So we've done a longer home feed, right? It doesn't just fit in, and just this quick scrolling really makes it feel much more realistic. All right. So back to build mode, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set a hotspot. So we just click and drag. You'll get this blue overlay. Then it asks where you want to link to, right? So we're going to go to the no player illustration, right? Illustrator page. Okay. And we can do tap, and there's a whole bunch of double tap. You could swipe right, you could swipe left, whatever, right? So as you're designing, keep in mind that you do have access to these kind of controls so that you can simulate how your app works, right, to some extent. So we're just going to leave it at tap for now, and I'm going to push left, right? So if you roll over, you'll see these animate a little bit to kind of give you a hint. So I'm going to push left. I'm going to save that. I'm going to switch back to preview mode, and I'm going to click, and there we go. All right. Now I don't have any controls to go back yet. It's just this, right? And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to switch to build mode. Now I'm on the detail page. And I want to be able to go back. So I'm gonna set it to the home feed, and then I'm gonna include this in a template, right? You'll see up here it says templates applied. So I'm gonna include that hotspot in my template. I have to create a new one. I'm gonna call it main menu. And I save that. Okay. And now it turns green. So now I know it's in the one template, in my hotspot is now in a template. Okay. I'm also going to put a link on here, but because this back arrow is going to change all the time if I have multiple screens, I'm just going to, I know it's going back to the home feed, so I'm just going to set it there. And the same thing, I want it to push right? Because we got here by pushing left, and now we're going to go back by pushing right. All right, so it looks like the left slides out of the way. So let's save that. And you know what, that's probably a good idea on the logo too, right? It's just set to instant. Let's set that to push right too. Make sure we save that. Whoops. Okay, saved it. Yep. All right, so let's refresh. Cranky Invision. Instant. Okay. Push right. Okay, now it's happy. Okay, whatever. Okay, so that's that. Now let's just test out how that's working. So here we are. Whoosh. Right? All right, put the arrow. Great. Okay, that all looks good. Okay, so back into build mode here. And now what we want to do is we want to put a hotspot here on our player. And we're going to now show with the player, and we're going to set it to a dissolve. Okay, so we'll set that. All set, and here it comes. Right there it is. Okay, and we're on a different screen, right? Everything else stayed exactly the same. All right, so if we go back, right, watch up here in the masthead, watch the photo. The only pixels that change are the player, even though these are two separate screens, right? We exported them both from the same artboard with just the layer turned on and off. So the only thing that changes, right, so it feels nice and smooth, we just get the dissolve, okay? So then on this third screen, right, we now can't go back to the logo because we're on a third screen and we want to be able to close. Okay, so we set that. Now we can apply our main menu. Right, so that's just the logo, and the same thing, right? We're going to set that. Let's just go into the home feed. Right, and we want to push right, save that. Okay. And then lastly, we want to be able to turn this off. Right, so we'll set this to the no player page and instant, right? We just, when you click it, it just goes away. So, all right, so we'll save all of that. And here's our preview mode. Okay, so we can turn off the player, and we can turn the player back on, turn it off, and we're just toggling between the two screens, right? It just looks like we're calling up the player menu, but we're just turning off, right? On and off. And we've got all the rest of the stuff. We've got the footer, right? This one we didn't set the fixed header or the fixed footer, right? So when it scrolls, it all goes away. So that's something we should go back and do. Right? Same thing here, no fixed header, no fixed footer. But if we turn it off and we turn it on and we go back, great. Right? When it comes in, it goes to the one without the player, we turn the player on. Okay. All right, so let's just set the fixed header. And then we'll set the fixed footer. A little easier now, that's the line. Excellent. All right, give that a test. Okay. I'm not sure what this green is coming from. We may have to tweak it a little bit. Let's see if that's something that we can fix. And maybe because it's transparent, I don't know if there's a background. Yeah, we'll have to check on that. Okay. All right. So let's go back to. Let's see. We're getting the. Let's do the fixed header. Still getting that green. I wonder what's causing that. Oh well. Well, not sure if we may have to just leave that as solid. Can't figure out how to change that. Anyway, all right, so back to the home, and here we go. All right, our prototype is now all linked up. All right, we've got some slides in there. We've got a little dissolve. Turn off our element. We've used the fixed header and footer and the hotspot templates, and we're in good shape. All right, so that's your challenge. Good luck.